All right, so let's keep looking at these exposition sections to sonatas. We looked at the Beethoven F minor the other day, and we saw that Beethoven does a couple things. Number one, first and foremost, as far as the structure, the form is concerned, he did a lot to make sure that we could clearly hear what was going on, that we could experience the separation between the main theme and the transition. That's a big deal. He put that big fermata there. Then the transition sounded like a transition. It sounded like a section in flux, right? It was sort of unclear what was going on. That was really nice. And then he used the secondary key area to unify the movement, to make sure that even though it's separate, it's in a different key, he used modal mixture to really connect the ideas that he was exploring in the piece overall in that section, even though it was meant to be a hugely, it's supposed to contrast a lot. So now we're going to switch and look at a Mozart piece. Got my Mozart edition right here. This is number 2. This is book number 2. Really great Urtext edition of the Henley here. So we're going to look at a very famous Mozart example. This is a sonata in F major. You may know the melody. It's this one. Right. You may be familiar with that. Hopefully, you've listened to it already. If you haven't, be sure to go and listen to it. We're just looking at the exposition here. And what I want to do is we're, again, going to do this in 2 parts. The first part that we're going to talk about right now is I want us to talk through some questions that we could ask of the main theme and the transition. Because Mozart, we're going to see, does things very, very differently here. First and foremost, his melodies are so florid and singable, and that's a really, critical difference between Beethoven and Mozart. Mozart has these super, super, super long, luxurious melodic lines. Beethoven, as we saw, his are often, number one, based on chords, right? We talked a lot about his melody, right, in the ska 2 of that section. But even the first one, right, the arpeggio, that's the main theme. That's just a chord. So Beethoven melodies tend to be really triadic, and I think of them as ideas. You don't need to always sing to do a Beethoven melody, right? Bum, 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 bum. It's kind of one of those, like, it's like somebody getting worked up, which I kind of like. Mozart, though, nobody's worked up there. And that's a key difference. But we're going to see that Mozart uses his beautiful flowing melodic phrases to cover up a lot more uncertainty in the form. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the music here, and instead of talking through it, I'm going to ask some questions about it. And when we come back together in our class on Friday, we're going to work through these questions together. So here's this. Again, you should recognize a little bit. You should have just listened to it. Right, that one. It's just gorgeous. So what I want us to do here at the outset, remember, sonata is formulaic, and composers use the fact that it's predictable and formulaic to mess things up. Beethoven used that to further his expressive goals. Mozart's going to use it maybe in a slightly different way. So the thing we always want to keep in mind is to make sure that we have a feel for what the structure should be, right? This is a piece in F major, and so we want to ask, okay, we've got these 3 sections, right? We've got our main theme, got our transition, and we've got the secondary key area in this exposition section. So let's say, okay, where should we be key-wise, right? So where should we be? So the main theme should start in F, right? And where should it end? It should end in F, right? So the main theme should begin and end in F major, right? I'm going to put down, watch this, put down a little separator there. The transition, tonally, what should the transition do? Transition should start in F, right? And where should we be by the end of the transition? We should be in 5 because this is a major key sonata, so we should be in C, right? So using this sort of sense of expectation is going to help us a lot. And then the secondary key area should start in C and end in C. That's our structure here. And we're gonna see just now that Mozart does some things that makes that structure maybe come into a little bit of doubt. But as we analyze this, we want to remind ourselves that this is the structure. Whether Mozart is showing it super clearly or not doesn't change the fact that this is how a sonata works. And Mozart can sort of exploit that predictability to do some interesting things. So let's get into this and see what I'm talking about. So the thing I want to point out is that this exposition, including the secondary key area, but we're just going to look right now at the main theme and the transition, contains just a ton of different melodies. Think about the Beethoven that we looked at. How many different melodies did that actually have? It had the main theme, right? Boom. Then what did he do to start the transition? Did it again. And even all those little flourishy things, right? Or whatever they were based on the main theme. They were based on, right, the little turn figure. Okay, there we go. So then we got into the ska. Had a slightly different melody there. Then we had, right? And then we had this last little melody, which was the... So that's like 4 different melodies in that whole thing, right? Not that many. Let's look here. So we start off at the beginning of this Mozart with this gorgeous melody. Right? So that's there. Then we sort of followed up with this lovely response, right? And we're sort of still in the, this area here. Right? Lovely opening. So there's a melodic idea, this. Right? So let's see what he follows it up. Right? This is clearly a whole different idea. So we sort of have melody number 1. Melody number 1 is measure 1, right? So then we had down here, starting in measure 12, 13, we have sort of a second melody, right? Now, notice I'm not calling this theme. I'm not saying this is a theme, main theme, secondary theme, whatever. The term theme is kind of a loaded term in sonata form study. So I'm just using melody very broadly because I'm not trying to assign structure to this. That's what we're going to do on Friday. I'm pointing out all of the different melodies that Mozart's using to kind of hide or disguise the structure, right? So here we are. We're in measure 10, 11, 12, 13. And I know this starts with pickups, but I'm just going to go with the full measures here, right? So measure 1, we've got a melody. Measure 13, already, we've got a whole new different melody, right? Very different. See what goes on. That sort of continues. And then we've got this nice little sort of... And then all of a sudden, Mozart, whoa, right? And we've got a whole new idea here. I'm going to call this like idea 3. I know this isn't a, melody, no. So maybe I'll change that. Instead of melody, I'm just going to call it idea. I like that. Idea number 2, idea number 1. That's even less, what's the word? I don't know. That's even less of a thing in sonata form. So idea 3 here is this cool, like, intense D minor thing with these cool diminished chords. Right? So that's really cool. So that's measure 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 is really where that starts here. Idea 3 is measure 23. So, man, we've already got 3 distinct ideas, and we're only 23 measures in. I mean, each of these ideas could be their own piece, really, right? They could be their own thing. So there we go. This awesome sort of this falling pattern here, and then we do it here on B, right? And then look, sort of a kind of a new, right? And we're doing it again. So kind of a new idea. I'm going to just call this idea, maybe idea 3.5, because it's, you know, it's different enough, right? It doesn't have the same characteristics, this upward, you know, this sort of kind of thing. Idea 3.5, but it's related. It just has a very different, sort of a different contour to it. Idea 3.5 is measure 31. Oops. What am I doing here? I ask that question all the time. What am I doing here? Right? Measure 3. Or idea 3.5 and measure 31. Okay. That's there. I mean, wow. And then we're sort of coming around and we've got this. And there we separate. And where are we down here? What do we have? Oops. Sorry about that. What key are we in here? C major, right? And what, how should C major stand out to us? What's significant about C major? Well, that's our secondary key area. So what looks on the map super straightforward. Yeah, we're in F for the main theme, and then the transition goes F to C. What we ran into, idea 1, idea 2, idea 3, idea 3.5, I might even call this a idea 3.6, or, you know, sort of a little different, before we finally arrive at ska 1 here in measure, what is this, 38, 39, 40, 41. Measure 41. So that's a lot to unpack. So my question for you, and what we'll discuss on Friday, is, as you look at these various ideas, how can you use the key structure to help you identify where the actual formal units are? Remember, finding these ideas is great, and I think it's really important to point that out, because as we're listening to this, as we're experiencing this, we're going to hear Mozart presenting different ideas. Right? We're going to hear that as a melody. We're going to hear that as a distinct melody. We're going to hear this cool D minor, thing. We're going to hear this thing that's happening here. They present as unique and separate musical ideas. We want to see how the structure of the piece is working to fit those all in. So think through that and see if you can come up with an analysis of where the structure is using the key, sort of the setup, the map that we expect, the expectation of the key structure for this, and also thinking, of course, always about cadences as you try to unpack this. So just be looking from measure 1 until measure 40, which is where we move into the ska section, and I'm going to talk through the ska section separately. So that's a start, and we're going to talk about this in class. So try to come with some perspective, some ideas on how you want to analyze the main theme and the transition of this piece.